only be based on dedication to truth and professionalism. Join psychotherapist Michelle Prashad along with Felipe and Fraser on Face Off, Monday to Friday, 4 to 7 p.m. on Talk City 91.1 FM.
.23 moving up to 7 o'clock. Good Monday morning, Trinidad Tobago. In our second hour, you can look out for Attorney General Anna Logan, who will be focusing on the Bail Amendment Bill 2015. In this segment, we have another attorney at law and also President Commissioner on the Police Service Commission, Martin George. Good morning, Happy New Year.
Good morning, Happy New Year to you, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
The Bail Amendment Bill has been passed. How important is it at this time, and what are your concerns, if any? Mr. Pandey just articulated a concern about, while it is a forward-thinking move in terms of those who are repeat offenders and trying to keep those repeat offenders who are apt in some instances to continue carrying out a life of crime off the streets. There are concerns that some people may be set up if someone has a grouse against them, and this should be coupled with some sort of expedient trial process.
Well, of course, I would agree with those comments, but apart from that, Paul, one of the heartening things about this debate and the passage of this piece of legislation was that I think you saw some signs of maturity among the politicians on both sides of the divide, in that they recognize that, look, you need to have some level of cooperation in order to get important pieces of legislation through, so that you don't turn the crime issue into a political football. And I think that's one of the points that Mr. Pandey was making, because he said that, you know, what they do is they try to get one-upmanship, you know, make you look badly because crime is, you know, high, so therefore I wouldn't support you. So the thing is, I think we need to move to that place where the politicians understand their responsibility to the country, and we as the citizens have to hold them accountable to that.
Well, this was one of the instances where we saw maturity, but that's not always the case.
No, that's not always the case. That's why I say that's the good point about it. That's the good point about it.
With this now then passed, what are the strengths of this now in the arsenal of the justice system?
Well, it certainly, gives more teeth to your process, because if it is that you are making it more difficult for persons to come back out and continue their activities in a life of crime, then of course it's a good thing in that regard. You balance it, as Mr. Pandey said, on the other side with ensuring that you have a speedier mechanism. And Paul, I have said repeatedly, I will say it again, one of the easiest ways and one of the simplest things that you can do to speed up the mechanism in the court system is that you remove all police prosecutors from every court in Trinidad and Tobago. They function at the magisterial level. I say remove all of them. With the greatest of respect to them, you have some excellent police prosecutors, but unless they are trained attorneys at law, and you can even get trained attorneys at law from within the police service. The police service is replete with numerous attorneys, but they are not in the prosecutorial department. So in other words, they need to have attorneys alone prosecuting. Let the DPP's office run some training courses, have them there, remove the police prosecutors, because that's a big clog on the system, because many times you have a technical legal point, and the police prosecutor is unable to deal with it. He then has to write to his superiors saying, well, look, could you please write to the DPP's office requesting a legal opinion? The superior then has to request the file from him. He then reviews the file. Then he has to write to the DPP. The DPP then has to now assign an officer who then has to now request the file again, get it, because that officer is not en courant with the facts or even the evidence which may have gone by. You see, so therefore you need the person who is actually doing the trial to be able to handle all aspects of it.
Should there be a greater burden of evidence now that this is a fillip in the arsenal of the criminal justice system on behalf of persons who are now going to be identifying these repeat offenders and passing them through the system again, and not, because now the option for bail is now null and void, or it's going to be null and void. with a view to providing a check and balance.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you need to have the checks and balances, but I'm not sure that there's a greater burden in terms of an evidential burden. At the end of the day, if it is that you have put forward your case, then of course it's up to the defense attorney. I assume that the persons would have defense attorneys. They would then do, the necessary, and they would say, well, look, hey, this what they're bringing, it certainly is not sustainable because of ABC based on the legislation. So I guess it sharpens the teams on both sides, both the prosecution and the defense. But at the end of the day, it is something that is a step in the right direction. It's a step forward. But the point is we need to ensure that all the mechanisms are in place, not just this.
There have been some concerns about the list of offences which had been included. Are you comfortable with the list of offences that's now been extended?
Well, the thing is, you have to always sometimes be careful in terms of, trying to cast the net too wide and too far, because as, again, Mr. Pandey pointed out, and you see he's from a defense attorney's perspective, you can always have the risk that persons who should not be caught in the net are caught in the net. Now, of course, you weigh the greater good. In other words, what is the greater good of society as opposed to, the individual right? And that's always the competing interest that you balance. But at the end of the day, I think generally it is a step in the right direction. It is a good thing, because when you think of it, like for instance, someone might be wrongly accused of murder. There's absolutely no bail for murder. But unfortunately, the system is such that it says you must stay inside until exonerated or hung, well, if that is the case.
In terms of the system now moving forward, the public will say, well, you know what? It's incumbent upon the individual now to stay out of trouble. If you have had convictions before, and the system is now looking at you, as we've seen in other jurisdictions, that, well, you may have paid your time or not.
Yes.
And now it's incumbent upon you to get out of trouble or stay out of areas where you may deem to be in trouble.
It's a similar thing, Paul, as what you have in some of the first world countries where they have like a register of sex offenders. So they're saying, look, you have done this in the past. We're not saying that you are going to do it, but we are publishing this register so persons will know. So therefore, as you say, it's now incumbent upon you. And, it's something we have to look at, because I saw recently an Englishman was convicted here in the courts, and I was quite happy to see that, because it's a circumstance where he pleaded guilty, and I saw his attorney made a very stirring plea, for leniency on his behalf. And I was looking on with interest, because I said, I hope this magistrate is strong enough to not accept that and to ensure that this person is, put behind bars for some time. And the magistrate did so, because what you have is persons who might be on a registry in England. They come down to the Caribbean to ply their trade because they are not on any registry here. So these are the things we need to move forward and have in our legislation, so that we can say, well, look, yes, we give you the fullest and fairest opportunity, but if you run afoul, then we are going to publish the list. We are going to put your names there.
How important is it now for the justice system, of course, to clean up their acts? Because now this has been an issue, not only because of this amendment to the bill, but previously there's been the backlog of cases. Now, if you're going to be holding someone, though he or she may have had convictions or brushes with the law before, to me, it's unacceptable now to hold someone for 5-10 years while awaiting trial, because that person has no option for bail.
I agree. And I think of course, the Chief Justice and the judiciary have been under the microscope these last few weeks, and of course, no one is ever fully comfortable under that kind of close scrutiny and attention. But at the end of the day, we have to be mature enough to recognize that if it's constructive criticism, whether it's for the judiciary, whether it's for the legal profession, whatever, we must be man enough to accept it in good spirit, look at it, see where the positives are, and let's try and move forward. So one of the things that I have suggested, and the biggest clog on the legal system, is at the magisterial level. I have said, first and foremost, we need to start creating some Judge Judy type courts, where you take all the petty, small matters out of the official legal system. You set up a Judge Judy type of court whereby they can be dealt with. And the most important thing to avoid the clog, no attorneys. So you have absolutely no attorney, because at the end of the day, Paul, I mean, I'm an attorney, but I can tell you that, when you have attorneys come in asking for adjournment, saying, well, look, I'm not ready, I need time to prepare, I need time to read, it adds to the delays. So if you have this, where the small matters are dealt with, you have a magistrate sitting there, the parties agree, look, to be bound by whatever the decision is, and absolutely no attorneys. They come, they say their piece, because let me tell you, most times in these small matters, what the people really want is just an opportunity to be heard. That's right. So you do that, and you get all all of those out. Traffic matters. We should not really be clogging a magistrate's list with 150 traffic matters each day for parking tickets, for simple violations. You park too close to the corner, you drove without a proper headlight, that kind of thing. These are things that we could simplify. First of all, if we use the technology, I mean, I think I gave you this example before, but I'll just repeat it for the benefit. My brother who lives in Switzerland, he got his ticket in the mail for breaking a traffic light with his picture. Yeah. So he says, in this circumstance, why do you even bother? You just pay it one time. And they send it in the mail, and they give you the opportunity. You could send back a check in the mail, so you don't even leave your home. You write the check, you mail it out, you send it back, it's settled.
What's the opportunity for the judicial system at this point? I mean, very often the public looks upon the judicial system, the Chief Justice, as sacrosanct. You can't talk about them, you can't question their efficiency. Yeah. Do you think this is an opportunity for the judicial system to objectively look at themselves and see whether they've kept pace with the evolving society? Well, in many ways.
Sometimes it's nice to come down from the ivory towers, because it's been said since in the Privy Council case of Ambad versus Attorney General, it was said that justice must not be a cloistered virtue, and we recognize that, look, you have to be en courant with the society, the realities of the society. In fact, the president of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Sir Dennis Byron, he did a paper recently where he presented an argument to show that, look, notwithstanding the fact that the court may function at a certain level, they must also be in touch with the realities of the society. The issue he was touching on at that point was the question of whether there should be a female member among the panel of judges, because there's one who's retiring soon, and the question was, should they replace it with a female also? And he said, look, notwithstanding everything else, there's the perception and the reality, and you must be sensitive to both. And I think in this case, our court system, the Chief Justice and the judiciary, I think they've recognized that, look, some of the criticism is valid. You may not like it. At the end of the day, we're all human, and nobody likes criticism. But if it's constructive criticism and it's valid, and there are points that can be learned, then we must all be big enough to accept it, make the change.
But as a country, because of the impact on crime now on national development, literally almost putting this country in crisis mode, moving forward. You have possible investors saying, no, not me and there. You have the loss of life in 2008, 550 people. You have 20 murders in 1 week. And this is apolitical. This is no matter what administration is in power, because every single administration has faced this seemingly insurmountable challenge in the last 15 to 20 years. So I don't think anyone can point a finger at anyone else.
No.
Because it's been a constant challenge. Because of that, don't you think we've come to the point in this country where some serious investigation, insurmountable challenge in the last 15 to 20 years? So I don't think anyone can point a finger at anyone else. Because it's come to the point in this country where some serious investigation into an institution as critical as the criminal justice system needs to be looked at and investigated with a view to finding the shortcomings and remedying them urgently, because no matter how much money you pour into a system that's not fixed, you're going to have the same issues 10 years down the road.
All right, Paul, when you say investigate, I would pause, because you know what?
Well, maybe investigate is the wrong way. No. Having an inquiry.
No, well, that's even worse, because to my mind, once you talk that, then persons start thinking commission of inquiry, and you know what our history as a nation is with commissions of inquiry. They are the most expensive theatrical productions, which at the end of the day provide light entertainment and amusement, but take nobody forward in terms of the process. So therefore, I would not look at that at all. There are several simple things we need to look at. First of all, I think the office of the Chief Justice, it's too overburdened in terms of the work that is required. And I'll tell you why. You have a judicial role, you have a financial role, you have an administrative role, all vested in one individual. We need to look at simple things, and this would require a simple constitutional amendment, which both sides of the House could agree with. You separate, you create a post of something like a chancellor, who will deal with, say, for instance, the financial matters. Then you have like an administrative head, and then you have the legal head, who would still carry the title of Chief Justice, but who can then focus on the things within the system. He has the support of the Chancellor, he has the support of the administrative head, so therefore he doesn't have to split himself so much in terms of trying to get everything done, because it's easy to point fingers and say, well, look, hey, he's the Chief Justice, he should be doing A, B, C. But at the end of the day, the reality is there's a whole lot on his plate in terms of the level of responsibility.
Even if we solve the workload of the Honorable Chief Justice, there are still other parts of the machine that need to be resolved.
I agree.
He can only do so much if his resources are given to him.
That's correct. And you look at issues such as coming down the line, coming down the food chain, so to speak. You look at the issues, say, for instance, with the Court of Appeal, where there may be avenues where you can make changes in terms of improving it, in terms of you might want to look at a question of having the Court of Appeal sit more regularly in terms of a larger pool of Court of Appeal judges, if possible. I mean, if you need to make amendments to the law to get that done, do so. Let us have them sitting so that you may have court sitting morning, and then you may have like afternoon court, like starting from 1 going right up till 4 p.m. With the Court of Appeal. These are ways that we can get things moving faster. You look even down at the level of the puisne judges, and you look at ways in which you can make sure, like for instance, I've said, give each judge a dedicated research assistant who is an attorney at law. So therefore, no judge can say, I didn't have time to research this. Simple things. Put internet in all the courts. Make every court in Trinidad and Tobago have internet access. So members of the public, the judiciary, attorneys, everybody.
It's scary to think that we can't presume that at this point. It's scary to think that we can't presume in 2014 that every court in this country has internet.
It's crazy.
How important is decentralization of justice at this point?
The thing is, you see, the problem with decentralization, at the end of the day, your justice system requires harmonization, because you need consistency, you need unity, you need to ensure that even if you decentralize, that it is one common thread running through the system. You don't want people to think that, well, look, if I go in this court, I'm getting a certain type of justice. I go in another court, I'm getting a different kind of justice.
Why would one presume that? Because it's decentralized. I would imagine all the courts, all the judges, all the magistrates would still come under the purview of the Chief Justice. It will be different locations so that people in Sejros don't have to come into Port of Spain, etc. They're district courts, yes, but they're not as equipped or resourced as the courts in
two things that you're looking at there. Primarily, I would think family courts. That's one thing that you could start with, and then, of course, maybe another high court. But, of course, you have the challenges with that. But the family court, I think that's essential, because as it is, the family court in Port of Spain, it's a wonderful project. It works beautifully. You need about 2 or 3 others just like that around the country. You need one in Tobago, you need one in San Fernando, and you probably need one in Deep South, whereby people can get their family matters, because I'll tell you, family matters create a lot of workload in the system.
What do we underestimate that fall under the remit of family matters?
Well, divorces. I mean, unfortunately,
child support.
Yes, maintenance, child support, access, because people fight over the simplest, smallest things sometimes, that, it ends up being a fight between the parties, not really so much in the interest of the child. They want to prove that, well, I can get the child from you, or I can get the child for vacation, and you can't get the child. So all these issues. So if we have, say, 2 or 3 more family courts, that's going to be a big help in the justice system. And as you say, if you locate them in the outer areas, as opposed to everybody feeling that they have to come to Port of Spain, that gives people a greater sense of participation in the justice system. They can feel a greater sense of fairness, equity, and justice.
I'll move the conversation to the police commissioner. You're a sitting member of the Police Service Commission. I know there's only so much you can say, but Mr. Pandey was critical of the Police Service Commission criticizing the police commissioner in terms of the statements about tardy reports. He said it doesn't seem to be productive in any way. That's a private matter, or should be a private matter. Listen, the report's late. Fix that,
well,
etc.
With the greatest respect to Mr. Pandey and his extensive knowledge and experience, I would beg to disagree wholeheartedly with his conclusions. And I'll tell you why. It's not a private matter at all. It's a very public matter, because you know why, Paul? Under the Constitution, we are mandated to monitor and assess the roles of the commissioner and the deputy commissioners of police and report to the public. All of that is set out in the Constitution. So in other words, this is not a question of a private issue. And if we, at the end of the day, have to put out a report which reflects badly on the commissioner, we have actually given him the fullest and fairest opportunity to say, well, look, this is an area that we are not satisfied with. We need you to fix this. And it is not for lack of private reminders. We have done so, and we've made that clear in our statements.
But then there's a question moving forward, and we're going to head up to the news and take you over the news. But at what point does the commission say, well, we need to look elsewhere, especially in the context of the extremely, as Pastor Dutton put it, fossilized mechanisms in place? The fact that the process is not as fair to local possible local applicants, and really and truly this is a critical role in the police service, you know, in terms of administration and moving the service forward.
Well, it is, but I would again.
It almost seems like in some instances, well, you don't like, and this is not necessarily reflected at Commissioner Williams, but I do like what I have, but I have no choice under the circumstances.
It would appear so. I would agree with you, because, as you say, the mechanism doesn't provide for any speedy change or transition. So the mechanism is the difficulty, but it's not fossilized as Pastor Dutton may think. It's actually too involved and too complicated a machinery. So we need to simplify the process, and that's the difficulty. That's the difficulty we have.
Simplify in what ways?
Okay, first of all, the Police Service Commission does not have as hands-on a role in the selection and appointment of a commissioner as the public may think. There are many aspects of it which are totally outside our purview. The Office of the DPA has quite a lot to do with it, and they are the ones who have chosen NIPDEC to subcontract to select the firm.
Which has to be a foreign firm, is it?
No, it doesn't have to be a foreign firm. But from the initial leanings, it appears that this is the way they are going, because I think from what the chairman, Professor Dioswan, said at the press conference last week,